Kids, how are you? It's been a while since I've had something new to say, and I have something new and exciting I wanted to share with you. I've been thinking, I've been reading like news articles and stuff. I read a little bit every day when I can, and I try to stay in touch as much as possible with reality, although I do check out quite often. However, um, it seems to me, and today it really hit me between the eyes. I read this one particular article, and it just bashed me over the head. It was so amazing to read. Now, here's my premise, and I'm going to call this video "Religious is the New Gay." Now, I know that's going to set a lot of people on fire. Not only religious people, but gay people also. So y'all get over it. So, and I'm going to tell you from my perspective why I believe this is true. Now, back in the early 1980s, coming out as gay had huge ramifications, much more than it does so today. You lost your family, you lost your friends, you could lose your job. Society basically marginalized you if you had any opinion whatsoever, and they did that for years and decades afterwards. And to some extent, they still do, particularly with gay men. In the workplace, they treat gay men about as respectful as they treat women. What I mean by that is when a gay man speaks, behind the scenes, people treat them like they treat women. When women speak and they say something unpleasant, they're just a bitch. Or they're on the rag. And the same thing when a gay man speaks and has something harsh to say. Oh, they're just bitchy, or they're on the rag, or they need some dick, or whatever it is. And they just get discounted. And it really was eye-opening to me when I came out to find out this, like, I think probably 15, 20 years after I came out, that I had been being marginalized all this time. Even though I was relatively successful in my industry, a lot of times behind the scenes people were marginalizing me. And when I changed companies in the same industry, I didn't go into the new company, quote, being gay, and I got treated so much different. People, as a white male, people treated me like my opinion was gold. When I was gay, I was just a bitchy faggot. But when I was a white male, I could say the exact same words, and everybody just, it was like a miracle. Now, I lost my family because I was gay. They basically disowned me, threw me out, whatever. Fine. I understand. Thank God they're all dead now. Karma's a bitch. Have a nice day. Literally, I was adopted. They bought me, and I was there to teach them buyer beware. And I did a good job. So, now, as the shock of being homosexual started to slow down, as there were more homosexuals, and people willing to say, hey, I'm a homosexual, and I'm in your life, and I'm not bothering you by being one, or being dishonest and sneaking around behind your back, or trying to sneak a peek at you or something. I'm just upfront about it. A lot of people calmed down and realized that it wasn't this thing that they had thought. So the negative reactions have been lowering and lowering and lowering in the grand scheme of things for quite a while now. And it's a nice thing to say. There's still lots of problems, don't get me wrong, but it's not this death sentence socially and financially and everything else that it used to be. Now, on the other hand, when I was growing up, my parents were both, I guess, religious, but not actively religious. Apparently, before they were married, they were both actively religious. And after they divorced, they were actively religious. But during their marriage, they were not, because they could not agree on which cult of Christianity that we should be indoctrinated in. Now, my mother went out as far as the baptism thing went, and we were baptized Lutheran, because that was insisted upon. But other than that, my father would not have us go to a Lutheran church. My mother had no interest in us becoming Episcopalians, and my father thought one set of my grandparents were Presbyterian, actually his parents, had joined a new cult. So, and my father despised Catholics. So there really wasn't much choice other than, I suppose, Judaism or Islam, but we didn't talk about Judaism or Islam back in those days, because back in those days, they still kept Jews out of country clubs and stuff like that, and Islam really wasn't even an issue back then. Nobody even discussed it. It wasn't even a topic of discussion, except if you were a Jew and you were fighting Islamic people, and that's been going on since they were, forever. Now, as time has creeped on from the 80s, like I said, gay people have become more acceptable because people have realized we're just not that radical. Or actually, most of us are rather boring. On the other hand, religious people who used to have a lot of very strong, nasty opinions about almost everything and very judgmental, used to be kind of quiet about it. They'd say it at home, they'd talk about it at Thanksgiving, etc., etc., etc. They even talk about each other. I know that was the case in my family, and I know that was the case in a lot of other people's families. And I know that's the case, and it has been the case for a very long time, because I asked my grandparents about it. So, religious people, be it Christians, Islamic, Jews, whatever, just basic religious people, used to be kind of quiet, so they all had an image. There was an image of Islam, there was an image of Judaism, there was an image of Christianity. None of it based on reality or the actual history of the religion or the actual practice of the religion or the actual thought patterns of the people that do call themselves these things. But since they were quiet about it and kept it on the down low, much like gays did before they started coming out of the closet, there really wasn't anything to talk about or to attach or to become offended by. But as it happens, somewhere about 2000-ish, religion started, as gays started to become more popular, religious people started to speaking up more and started coming out of the closet. And this coming out of the closet has been more and more and more rapid. It kind of began basically in the late 80s, but they had the televangelist movement and all that kind of stuff. And televangelists would speak out and say, just mind-numbing things that had nothing to do with so-called religion, but they would say them. And people would applaud and send in checks, and it was great. But as this movement got legs, and they decided to start coming out, in the last few years, they've been out. I mean, since 9/11, it's been on. It has been on. Radical Islam has been on versus regular Islam. I mean, Islamic people can't even get along with themselves. They kill each other. And they kill Christians, and they kill Jews. Christian people can't get along, and they love to kill Islamic people, and they pretend to like Jews, but only pretend, and they write a check only because their Bible tells them they're supposed to, but a lot of times in private they don't like Jews. Jews drive them nuts, and they think they're greedy, and they have all these things that they say about Jews. Meanwhile, Jews are Jews, same as they've been since they gave birth to Christians and Islam. They fight with Islam constantly, and Christianity they kind of look at with a great deal of suspicion and also a great deal of opportunity. Because the Christian Bible, unlike the Islamic book, kind of makes Christians obligated to them, where in Islam that's definitely not the case. So Jews can play off that rather well, but not that Christians haven't treated them horribly in the past, like the Holocaust, just for an example of a modern day Christian terrorizing Jew thing. All these religions just fight with each other constantly. They fight with each other, and they fight amongst themselves. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of different Christian sects in the globe, because Christians can't, for example, even agree on how to be Christians, and most of them, sadly, really aren't Christians. They're Paulists, but they don't even know how to call themselves Paulists, because they've always heard that what Paulism is Christianity, and it's really not. But that's a whole other subject. What I'm saying is, now they're coming out and they're vocalizing what they feel and what they think, which is kind of like a gay person coming out and saying, hey, I suck dicks and I enjoy it. Now, that used to give people the vapors. Oral sex. First of all, some would say oral sex like they never had it. And then some would say, well, oral sex with the same sex. And everybody would fall down, and it was a big drama. And, you had to get the fan and take them to the hospital and, have them recharged and reanimated. And frankly now, people pretty much are getting over it. But this new wave of a religion is not new. I mean, it's not new, but it's new to the world, and it's new to society, and it's new to the media, and it's new to people that don't believe that exact thing or are in some other sect of the same religion. So you have this horrible backlash that these religious people are getting, not Islamic, Jewish, and Christian. And there's political people in this country that pander to, let's say, in the United States, for example, these radicalized Christians, which come from God knows which church or which couple hundred different churches, but they're extremely radicalized, and they like to hear radical things. So they pay the politicians to speak for them. And politicians say these really ugly, ridiculous things which horrify absolutely everyone else. And then there's a huge backlash. And recently they passed a law, this religious freedom law in Indiana, which caused essentially a nuclear explosion. I was just there last weekend, and to tell you the truth, it was amusing, because the people that live in Indiana really didn't think before they voted, and they a lot of them kind of got sucked up into the fever of it all, because they feel like they're being tough and speaking their mind, and they feel like they're victims, and they feel like they need to be good Christian soldiers. Well, they found out that if you word things a certain way, there's going to be this horrible backlash on you, not just by other Christians that don't agree, but by everybody else. I mean, everybody else. And so it was like this eye-popping experience when the whole world came down on them, and they had the Big Four basketball tournament the weekend before I was there. And apparently, in many hotels that were all full for this basketball tournament, and they had no other choice but to go to Indiana, there were protests in lobbies of hotels that just broke out amongst the fans that were not from Indiana, that did not appreciate this new law and felt very uncomfortable. And these people were Christians, they were white, they were heterosexual, they were black, they were Christian, they were heterosexual, they were gay, they were lesbian, they were bisexual, they were transgender, they were Islamic, they were Judas, they were everything else besides who these politicians were pandering to. And the poor people that work at these hotels were mortified because a lot of them didn't have these personal feelings that were presented or in this bill, and they had no intention of acting upon their newfound freedom. And they frankly just thought it was, horrible. And now everybody's mad at them. So then they kind of felt like weird because they were being blamed for living in Indiana, and therefore it was their fault. Even whether they voted for it or not, it was still their fault. And everyone was getting slammed. And it certainly sent a wake-up call to several other states that were just about to do the same thing, because it's not good for business. Trust me, it's not good for business. And it leaves mental and emotional, and in some cases, if things got rowdy, physical scars on businesses. So a lot of politicians are now walking it back. In the meantime, that's just making individuals and pastors and stuff like this in these radicalized churches out there more and more and more, making these outrageous claims. I mean, just outrageous claims. And there's a backlash. There's a backlash online every single day. It's like an avalanche falls up. And it's not just people that are not, are not Christian. It's Christians too. There's a lot of Christians that don't agree with other Christians, more so than there's people that don't agree with Christians to begin with. So, Christians fight among themselves worse than anybody else fights with them. They're really hateful to each other, and they can be very pointed, and it's a good debate to have, and I'm glad to seeing it. But it's that same backlash where, like Indiana's case, and like some of these churches' cases, like the church that this guy wanted everybody to pay for his new private jet, that went over like a tin balloon. Suddenly he had to backtrack on that, and he lost quite a few people in his church because the social backlash in the media and on social media, and among friends of theirs and family members that didn't go to their church, suddenly it woke up some of these people's minds, and they said, you know what, wow, this is just not what I believe. So they move on. It was just like being gay in the 80s. It's a tough road. If you're going to stand up and raise your hand and say, this is how I feel, or this is how I believe, or this is what I am, you have to be ready to get just ripped to shreds and lose your family over it and everything else. And a lot of these people really don't believe that strongly in what they're saying. And then when they get this humongous negative backlash, they get shocked, and it wakes them up, and suddenly they decide, maybe I need to look at this again. Now, I wish I could look at being gay again. I didn't want to be gay. I just happened to be gay. So I really had nothing. It was hard enough to accept it by myself, and then it was almost life-ending, literally, to have to deal with everybody else reject me as I was trying to accept myself. And I survived it. And it's 2015. But I don't think that this radical religious stuff can really last. the test of the microscope, of the constant microscope of the media, the constant microscope of social media, the constant microscope of just this wide open communication that the world has now. Unless we become oblivious or tolerant to religious extremists, which I think is going to be a little bit harder than getting used to gays, only because there's so many different kinds of religious extremists. I mean, there are millions of kinds. There's only one kind of gay. You're either gay or you're not gay. You're either gay, you're straight, you're bisexual, you're transgender, or you fit into some other category like non-sexual or whatever. There's some people that like to make up new categories every day for sexuality or non-sexuality. But the major one, gay, straight, gay, bisexual, transgender. Okay, you can pretty much get most of the world into that. But you can't get most of the world into any particular kind of religion. So for the whole world to suddenly become tolerant for, let's say, extreme Islam, and there's different kinds of extreme Islam. I mean, there's not just one. There's at least two, and maybe three. So it's not just all the same thing. It's not like, Islam is just one big thing. No, it's different divisions, just like Christianity. And Christianity has different divisions, and then they have extremists in those divisions. So you have, literally 500,000 different kinds of extremist Christians. And then you have something like Westboro Baptist Church, which makes many Christians cringe, but yet their leaders never speak out against that church. I've never heard the Pope once mention them. I've never heard the leader of the Baptist Church ever talk about them. I've never heard the leader of any Christian sect ever speak about Westboro Baptist Church. And they're Christians. Now, are Christians comfortable with their views and the way they behave and the way they torment people and scar people and disrupt funerals and scream in front of children horrible things? Wishing children dead because their parents maybe because their parents don't go to Westboro Baptist Church, and therefore God hates them and they're fags. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I don't know how much people will actually ever get used to tolerating that. I don't think they will. So that's my premise for today. Religious is the new gay. And being an old gay, I have to say one thing, and I know this is going to sound really cruel, but karma really is a bitch, and it works, and it'll get you. And all you people out there who are pretending to be something you're not, and suddenly people around you are coming out and showing us what you really talk about and what you really believe, and you're getting backlash for it, and you're finding out just what hateful demons you really are. It's kind of delicious, actually. It tickles me, I have to say. It tickles the shit out of me. Thank you. You made my rough childhood and losing my family and all the torment and the pain and everything else I've gone through in my life, and the rapes and the beatings and the abuse, you made it all worth it, because now you're opening up and you're showing us yourself, and you're getting judged for it. Have a nice day.